Everyone laughed at him when he married her. 6 years later she shows her transformation. What is beauty? Is it just the outside, or does the inside count too? This man knew his wife wasn't the prettiest, but he loved her anyway. Unfortunately, his friends couldn't overlook her looks. This has been a tough time for the couple as they enjoy one of the most precious moments in their lives. 6 years later she showed them her whole metamorphosis. Then everyone fell silent. First love. At some point in college, she was lucky enough to meet her Mr. Right. She finally met a man who accepted her for who she is. So it did not take long and they decided to get married. Criticism. This bride received a lot of criticism for her looks when pictures of her and her groom surfaced on the internet. But in the 6 years since, she has undergone a massive metamorphosis that has silenced every critic. This true story shows that looks aren't the most important thing in the world. The wedding. Despite the nasty remarks, the bride and groom had an amazing wedding day. They don't care what other people think. They got married because they are each other's true love. They weren't bothered by other people's nasty comments. Unfortunately, her friends and family weren't the only ones who couldn't keep their opinions to themselves. Ideal of beauty. We admit that both the bride and the groom do not quite fit the ideal of beauty that we have in our world today. But that says more about our ideals of beauty than it does about them. They love each other and don't care about looks. Perhaps they are more evolved than we are. The Internet. The Internet seems to have a new obsession every day. It followed the same trend with this story. Their wedding pictures surfaced, they got a lot of negative comments, but after just a week or so the comments died down. The couple continued to love each other and had a great honeymoon. The world forgot about them, little knowing that they would reappear 6 years later, having undergone a massive metamorphosis. Young mom. By the way, she became pregnant immediately after the wedding and gave birth to a healthy baby girl. During the pregnancy, however, she had put on more kilograms. Understandably, her looks weren't a priority at the time anyway. The big decision. Now that her child was 1 year old, the young mother decided it was time for another change in her life. Her husband spent a lot of time in the army and she was more motivated than ever to finally change her appearance. It so happened that only 5 years later, no one would recognize her. Journalists. The metamorphosis would have gone undiscovered if it weren't for that one journalist. One day he couldn't think of a topic to write a story about as he recalled the controversial couple. Wondering what they were up to those days, he decided to write a follow-up story. "Were you still married?" He set out to find her. Looking for the couple. It took most of the day to figure out where the controversial couple was, but when he finally found them, a real surprise awaited him. He found her in a small town away from the big cities. They had built a beautiful home there where they lived together, still very much in love. Found them. For the first time, the journalist couldn't believe that he had actually found the couple after all these years. When the husband opened the door, he was confused at first, but then he lovingly invited the journalist into the apartment. He immediately called his wife to come out of the bedroom. But the journalist couldn't believe his eyes. Metamorphosis. It had been 6 years since her pictures appeared on the internet. They had stayed out of the limelight ever since. The bride had changed dramatically in those 6 years, something both her friends and total strangers on the internet never expected. Shock. The journalist was shocked. Was that the same woman as in those pictures 6 years ago? She looked very different. He realized what kind of shovel he was holding in his hands. People would be amazed to see how she looked today. The woman. The woman had undergone a complete transformation and didn't look the same anymore. According to her, she had made some serious lifestyle changes over the past 6 years. For example, she had started eating healthier and exercising more often. She and her husband had some advice for the rest of the world. Change. The only thing that has changed in their relationship is their looks. They still love each other as much as they did that fateful day 6 years ago when they got married. They never cared what the critics said. This metamorphosis really says a lot about today's society. Are you ready to see the actual change? Almost 100 kilograms less. After we understood that the inner values are the most important, let's now focus on the outer. In fact, the woman managed to lose 98 kilograms. But how did she manage it, and what does she look like today? Not the only change. With the help of a private trainer, she managed to lose almost 100 kilograms, and today she looks like a top model. Today it only weighs a tender 54 kilograms. Can you imagine that? But that wasn't the only change. Plastic surgery. On her second wedding anniversary, she decided to actually have cosmetic surgery. But it is important to note that this was entirely her decision. Her husband was against it from the start, but in the end it was worth it. After all, the result looked surprisingly positive. She really was unrecognizable. Are you ready to see the result? Another person. Before we show you the face, check out her new figure. Incredibly, the new weight makes her seem like a completely different person. We are completely speechless. She has always been a very ambitious woman. Big ambition. During her time at school, she had excellent grades, and also at work she was successful. The only thing that bothered her was her weight and her looks. But this was no easy change at all. Every day she had to get up early to exercise, for 6 years. This photo was taken on their 5th wedding anniversary. Here she had almost reached her dream body. So, with joy, she asked her husband to take a professional photo of her. But what does the unbelievable end result look like? Before and after. Unbelievable, we would never have recognized the lady again. Her body, as well as her face and hairstyle, are like someone else's. But what did her husband say about the change? After all, he was against it at first. Another shock is coming. In the end, her husband also liked the results. But he kept emphasizing that he loves her, regardless of her looks. It might be worth mentioning that her husband wasn't exactly a supermodel either. Suddenly he even began to get complexes about his looks. What happens next year will shock her doubly. Please hit the subscribe button, like and hit the notification button for more videos.